Welcome, friends, community. Thanks for joining us. This is a special video that we put together as a bonus on the subject of credit cards and myths of credit cards. Coach Mike and I had got into a conversation, and so we thought we'd just have this conversation for you. So we're going to address the myths or some of the myths around the use of credit cards today. So, Mike, what are some of these myths that are out there that people say, I need a credit card for these things? So let's get into that conversation.
All right. Thank you, Jason. And we are going to talk about the top four myths that we continually hear as coaches. And that first myth being that a debit card is not as safe as the credit card, meaning that there's more protection when you have a credit card. And that simply is just not true. Visa or MasterCard have the exact same protection for either a credit card or a debit card. You have to read the fine print to do that to see the differences. But think about it from a business perspective as well. If you're Visa, are you going to create a special agreement with credit card holders versus a special agreement to debit card holders? Nah, that's too much work. So they're just going to have one agreement. So the protection laws are the exact same. So that myth is debunked. Do you have anything to say about Jason before I go to number two?
Sure. Yeah. So we have to explain there's a difference between using your debit card as a credit, so you're swiping or tapping, versus using your PIN number. When you use your PIN number, it's a different system that it goes through versus using your debit card that has the Visa or MasterCard logo and using it like the credit card users use it, where you're tapping or swiping. So those are two different things. What we're talking about here is the tapping and swiping, where you're using your debit card as a credit card. You have the money because it's in your debit account or your checking account, but the safety is exactly the same when you use it that way. If you use your PIN number and somebody steals your PIN number, that's a little bit of a different story, but the protection is the same. So I just wanted to add that.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. The second myth that we want to talk about today is I got a credit card because I get airline miles or I get cash back and the rewards are worth it. And I see a lot of these commercials of these small, even small business owners saying, "Oh, I got 20 grand back from this year from cash back." Well, if you look at the numbers of that, usually that's a 2% return, right? They have a 2 to 5% cash back when you have these things. Now you may have a 10% cashback reward, whatever that is for you. But on average, it's between 2 and 5. So for this person in this commercial that I saw for $20,000 in cash back for the year, that person spent $1 million. $1 million on this credit card to get $20,000 back. And that's no different than you spending $10,000 and getting $200 back. The math is the same. And if you were to spend $10,000 over the year, right, roughly $1,000 a month, I can promise you by doing what we teach, by moving away from the credit card, going to a debit card and going to cash to be more aggressive, you will save more than that $200 a year by simply having the pain points of instead of using plastic, using cash, you will save $200 a year easily. I have done that because I used to have a credit card and I used to keep it around for those cashback rewards. And I come to find out I started using it more and more
Hmm.
because I wanted more rewards. Well, that's silly. Why would I spend $100 to get $2 back? It just doesn't work in the long term.
Yeah,
So that myth.
that's actually a good point. Is the statistics are true where you do end up psychologically and then physically spending more money because we are chasing those rewards. You have to know that. So we're not here. I mean, we are here to tell you, let's not use these credit cards because they aren't the best way to financial success, financial freedom, living your ideal life. But if you do, you have to know that you are spending more money. You're spending 12 to 18% more money when you're using your plastic versus using cash. And even when you're using a debit card, you spend more money than you do with physical cash. So cash is the best way, then the debit card is the next best way. And then the credit card, you're spending a lot more money. And if that's your choice, that's your choice. But you have to know that you're spending a lot more money. So when Coach Mike is saying, hey, you can save the money that you are chasing those rewards for, you can save more than that and start putting that back in your pocket faster than you would be by racking rewards up with these credit cards, these airlines, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to know that when you're chasing those rewards, you're going to spend more money and they're counting on it. That's why the banks and the insurance companies have the biggest buildings in every city in the country, because they are building their businesses on our interest because we are racking up these credit cards.
Yeah, and that leads into the next myth perfectly of most people pay it off every month. It's simply not true, right?
Yeah.
The banks and insurance companies have the biggest buildings because of the interest. Exactly what Coach Jason was just saying. Why? Because we don't pay it off. I remember I was pretty diligent when I had a credit card, but there was still times where it's like, oh man, I don't get it paid until Tuesday, and the bill was due on Monday, and it's just you get too close to the line of paying the interest, and then something will happen. Luckily for me, at that time, I was single. It can probably even be easier to pull at the heartstrings when you want to feed your family, right? If you have little kids running around, all it's cold outside, I need to get little Johnny a new coat, whatever that is for you, whatever that emergency is, they continue to come up, and the time goes past, and we don't pay that credit card off.
Yeah. The other thing is to pay attention. When you think about your credit card balance and the minimum payment that's required, it is a substantially lower payment. So let's say I've got $1,000 on my credit card. The minimum payment on that's like 10 or 15 bucks. There's a reason why the banks put it that low, because psychologically you think, okay, good. If something came up, all I need to pay is 10 bucks. All I need to pay is $15. And guess what happens to that other $985? It goes toward paying interest. And you've got it 20%, 24%, sometimes 30% interest on $900 every month going forward. That is a huge amount of money that is wasted because we were lazy or we were not disciplined, or we just thought, well, let's just borrow that and I'll pay that off the next month. But what happens is a pattern starts repeating. And when that pattern starts repeating, you go month after month after month. And before you know it, even if you do pay that off by the end of the year, let's say, how many hundreds of dollars in interest did you pay toward that credit card when you could have put that in your own pocket? So I'm a master at this, and I have fallen victim to this before, where it's like, okay, well, this situation came up, so I need the money for that. So I'll just let the credit card slide, pay the minimum this month, and then the next month I'll catch up. And maybe I did that, but how much money did I waste because of that one decision? Anybody can fall victim to this. It's very dangerous. So just really, really be careful so you avoid them, especially when you're first starting out.
Yes. Yeah. Another common myth for us that we hear is I need to have a credit card for emergencies. Well, we kind of touched on it there because most people don't pay it off. It's because we had that emergency. Now, yours may be justified and well justified, but that new pair of shoes is not an emergency, right? We know that the tires are going to go out on the car at some point. We may not have known it's going to be next week, but 3 years ago, when we got that last set, we know that we put 20,000 miles on it or 50,000 miles on it, whatever it was. You know that things are going to happen. And this is why we preach so much about getting out of debt, staying out of debt, and having that emergency fund. Because when emergencies do come up, you can use the cash that you have set aside for those things. Because we know what an emergency is. Emergency is things that we don't see that coming. Well, how about all the other things that we know that are coming that we don't plan for? Because I can promise you, we are going to die. There's going to be someone in your family that is going to pass away. I can promise you something's going to go wrong on your car. I'm most likely you're going to outgrow or wear out the clothes that you own. Right. So you need to replace those items. Now, there's other things that you just don't see coming. A great example of this would be when I was riding my bicycle, I had a friend that actually was hit by another car. He don't even know what happened. It just happened. He just woke up in the hospital. That's how bad he was hit. He didn't see that coming. I mean, he could have planned for it, but you don't know that's going to come. Lucky for me, I've never been hit when I was on my bike, but I also had the money set aside if I do.
Hmm.
So those are the things that we want to debunk and not have a credit card to take care of those things that we know that are going to happen throughout life.
Yeah. One more thing on that emergencies is when you have an emergency, the last thing you want to do is to go further in the hole. Because when you have an emergency and let's say it costs you $1,000, if that's a tiny emergency in the grand scheme, let's say you use your credit card and you go $1,000 in debt because of this emergency. Well, if you're in this emergency without money and you put money on a credit card, you're doubling down on your risk because you're going further into debt, which you don't have the money for. Therefore, of course, that money is going to convert over to paying interest toward the banks. And then you get further and further and further in the hole. This is why people in North America are constantly living paycheck to paycheck, constantly deeply in debt, and constantly cannot reach financial freedom. We teach very simple strategies. Everybody knows this intellectually, but very few of us actually do it in order to reach financial freedom. And we believe that this is one of those key principles, is that if you do use debt as a tool, right? We talk about that as a tool, you will constantly be pressured up against living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's just the stats that are out there.
Yeah. And throughout this conversation, I had just thought of another one, a bonus, something that actually happened to me in an earlier module where we talked about checking your credit report, right? Of making sure everything in there is the way it's supposed to be. And by not having a credit card, you've just reduced your the opportunity for someone to steal that card number.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that came up is because that has happened to me. I had a charge on there that wasn't mine. And it was a small one. I'd say small. It was like $125, where it was, luckily for me, I'm a nerd, so I was able to notice that. But I felt as if this person was trying that in order to do it again in the future, right? If they were successful and I just paid it and I didn't notice, then they would have kept doing it, or bigger purchases, right? Until they got caught. So lucky for me, by choosing to get rid of that credit card, I've never had that happen again. I've never had that happen again. No one has stolen my card number or my identity since I got rid of the credit card. Now, it may not be directly related to that, but the fewer number of cards that you have and that you use, the less likely that that can happen to you. And it's
Yeah.
so freeing. It is so freeing. It's so peaceful is the word I'm looking for. It's just peaceful to know that I don't have to worry about that. Because I can promise you, when I go to the store and I use cash, no one can steal my identity by using cash. Now, I do have to go to the bank and pull the cash out or go to the ATM and do that. But one time of doing that, right? One time, let's say my wife and I pulled out $600 for the month for food. That's what we spent. So I went to the ATM, got $600 out in cash. That is our food budget for the month. Therefore, whenever we buy groceries or go out to eat or whatever that is for us, we don't have to worry about that card being stolen, that card number being stolen when we're at that restaurant or that grocery store or whatever it is that we make that purchase. It's just cash. And that was something that I want you to have as well. Peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Anything else that we want to end on? If so, I have one thing. Is just try it out. Like Mike was saying earlier in another module on another topic. Just try it. Try using cash and see what kind of progress you can make. Try use your debit card instead of credit card. We know these are dangerous. Stay away from them, especially when you're first getting organized and getting on your budget and all that. Try it. If you don't like it and you would choose to do something else later on, I promise you the banks will give you a credit card. But try this first. Try this and see what kind of progress you can make. See how much money you can save. And then, we can guarantee you that you'll be like, okay, this is working. It can work. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing, especially because we don't want the results that everybody else is getting.
That's all. Thank you for the conversation today, Coach
Okay.
Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. You as well. We will see you all folks in the next lesson or the next module. Thanks for joining us.